Hey, what's up, everyone? It is Lucy here today, joined by Cam.
Hi, Lucy.
Actually, today, as always, joined by Cam.
That's right.
With these Hearthstone videos.
Nobody else on this Australian team plays this game, so it's always you and me.
It's always you and I, and basically, this series is we're basically giving, well, Cam is giving myself and the listening and viewing audience out there a little rundown of some of the more popular decks that are running in Hearthstone at the moment.
Classic archetypes.
Classic archetypes, but also archetypes that are kicking my ass as I play through this month's ranked matches. So today we're going to be looking at Freeze Mage. Which again is a deck I've faced many times, only recognizing it because I keep getting frozen.
Right.
That's basically my only sort of yardstick for this deck.
There's actually a lot of tells with this deck. You can identify a Freeze Mage deck within the first couple of turns, but you have to be able to identify it, and you have to know how it operates. You have to know what they're gonna have in their deck. The hurdles you're going to have to overcome to beat the deck, because it plays so differently to any other deck out there. Freeze Mage is really interesting.
Well, give us a little overview.
Okay, so its game plan is basically to stall the game for as long as it takes to draw into the cards and combinations of cards that it needs to end the game. So what it's essentially doing, there's so much card draw in this deck, right? So let's run through. This is, by the way, this is a list by Tice, who's one of the top European players. But this is a pretty classic Freeze Mage list. And the game we're going to look at in a bit is a Reno version of it. So we'll look at that deck list after this. But I wanted to show you what a classic list looks like. Right. And there's just so much card draw in here. So Blood Mage draws a card, but is also great for extra damage on your burn spells. Loot Hoarder draws a card. Mad Scientist allows you to pull secrets out of your deck, which not only means you don't have to pay for the secrets, and secrets are fundamental to this deck. You have to pay for the secrets, but also thins your deck out, so you're less likely to draw into your secrets, and you're more likely to draw into other cards that are valuable for you.
Love that guy.
Accolade of Pain draws you cards, and it's really worth noting that when you watch Freeze Mage games, they very rarely just play the Accolade of Pain on 3. Right. Because let's say you're playing against the Druid, and the Druid silences the Accolade of Pain. That's the worst thing that can possibly happen, because it's got no real body to it. You want to draw at least 2 cards off this, so generally you are waiting until turn 5, and you're playing it and pinging it yourself. So this is the thing, is you're doing damage to your own minions. Like you might even have to, late in the game, you might have to play a Loot Hoarder and kill it yourself, so that you draw into the card that's going to save you in the game. Right. Let's see, what else have we got here? So
certain cards are absolutely imperative.
Some cards are absolutely imperative. So they're the card draw cards. Then the stall cards are things like Frost Nova, which on 5 you can let your opponent build up a bit of a board, and then on 5 you can play Frost Nova and Doomsayer and hope they can't remove it.
Doomsayer, that's the one that I hate. 7.
Yep.
7 health.
But you know,
so rude.
There's a few ways to deal with it. If you're playing against the class that has silence, they can make it absolutely ineffective. If you're playing against another mage and it's turn 6, they can fireball and ping it. But it is it's a really strong play. And the idea is that you try and just force your opponent to lose their board and then just do very little on the next turn. Then you've got things like Ice Barrier, that's a stall card. It's basically just giving you 8 more health. You've got Cone of Cold to freeze. You've got Blizzard to freeze and help clear the board. You've got Flame Strike to clear the board. So you've got all these ways to slow the game down and keep drawing cards, basically. And then, you've also got, Frostbolt and Ice Lance. They can, you can use them to freeze big minions or kill big minions, but you're actually saving them as part of your burn. Right. And that's what's going to finish the game. But before you can do that, you generally are going to be playing Alexstrasza. So this is another absolutely fundamental card to this deck, because it means that you can just get your opponent to 15, and then it's just about surviving the following turn if you know you have enough burn in hand to finish them off once they're at 15. And if you're facing a Freeze Mage, you know Alexstrasza is going to be coming, so you basically want to be trying to save your heal so that you can heal yourself back up out of range once they Alexstrasza you. And Alexstrasza, you can also use it on yourself if you need to.
Really low.
Because Ice Block is the other kind of key component here, because basically this just gives you 2 turns where you can't be killed. There are some situations that can kill you. For instance, if you play a Doomsayer, if you've got an Ice Block up and you're on like 1 health, and you play a Doomsayer to clear their board, but then they play Dr. Boom into it, what happens is the Doomsayer goes off, kills the Boom bots, but then your turn is over, so the Boom bots hit your face, but they don't proc the Ice Block, so you die.
Yeah, so I was playing against a Freeze Mage recently, and they were on 1 health and managed to use 2 Ice Blocks in a row.
Yep.
And then killed me.
Yep.
And I was on like 17 or something. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and you kind of, a lot of the time you have to assume they're going to be able to get to those Ice Blocks.
Yeah.
But it's about getting them down to 1 health.
Yeah.
And if you're a ping class especially, so if you're a druid or if you're a hunter or if you're a mage, get them to 1 health. But, again, like there are ways to bring themselves back up out of range. So this deck has Antique Healbot, and as mentioned, you could Alexstrasza yourself. Other crucial cards in this deck are Archmage Antonidas.
Familiar with that guy.
If you play him, then you can fire off, say, a Frostbolt and Frostbolt and Ice Lance on 10 and get yourself a couple of fireballs. So Freeze Mage has been kind of ebbed and flowed over the course of Hearthstone, right? So it had kind of disappeared a little bit, and then Blackrock Mountain came along and introduced a little card called Emperor Thaurissan. And that brought Freeze Mage back, because what it meant was, because in the early days of Hearthstone, a lot of the burn spells were actually cheaper than they are. So they nerfed them because Freeze Mage was just too strong. Yeah. Mage in general was just too strong. But what Thaurissan does is it kind of allows you to reduce the cost of those cards again and make the deck super, super effective. So if you can play Thaurissan with Archmage and a couple of spells in hand, suddenly you can generate so many fireballs on a single turn. If you can play Thaurissan with Alexstrasza in hand, again, you can just get your Alex out earlier. And this is also a deck where the coin can be really valuable for you, because you can use it to play Alex on 8, you can use it with Archmage to get another fireball. But it's a really complicated deck. I've been playing it like the last 24 hours in preparation for this. On ladder, and I think I'm about 50-50. Like I'm losing as much as I'm winning, because there's so many decisions to make, and it's so complicated, and it really is about math and understanding how looking a couple of turns ahead to how am I going to get lethal here? Right. And factoring in the ice blocks and all that kind of stuff.
So perhaps not the right deck for me to be playing, but certainly a good deck for me to have an understanding of.
Yes, because when you have an understanding of it, then... Because I love facing Freeze Mage when I'm playing a deck that I know can beat it, because I can just see all the moves are telegraphed. You know what they're trying to do, and so it's actually really satisfying just playing around everything they're trying to do. You can't always do that, of course. I should mention that Freeze Mage is pretty strong against Secret Paladin.
Oh, okay.
So if you're facing a lot of Secret Paladin, you could potentially give it a try.
Okay.
It's basically strong against any deck that really tries to swarm you with minions. So like Tempo Mage, Secret and Mid-Range Paladin, Zoolock, decks like that. Because you can just lock them down. Right. Lock them down and then end the game.
So this is your Reno Freeze Mage
So this is the Reno Freeze Mage deck.
It's very legendary heavy.
Yeah, so this is from Tempo Storm's meta snapshot discussion of Freeze Mage. So yeah, as you can see, the really cool thing about this is it's a Reno deck, but it's not all one-ofs. You've got 2 Ice Lances, you've got 2 Frostbolts, you've got 2 Doomsayers. There's a bunch of 2s in here, and the reason is twofold. Number one is the cards that you've got a couple of are integral to the deck functioning. They're integral to drawing into your secrets, they're integral to surviving, they're integral to, damage. But because you can draw through your entire deck so effectively, you can afford to run 2s of things, and you just have to wait until the point where you've drawn at least one of each of those sets of 2 before you play Reno.
Oh, that's so difficult though, right? Like, well, staying on top of that. On top of, like,
totally.
you know, like, have I played everything twice?
You just have to draw into it. You just have to know that there's only one of each in the deck.
Yeah.
So you can either, like, use a deck tracker if you want to, which is like an overlay.
Yeah.
Or you can literally have pen and paper.
Yeah.
Like, maybe just the deck list printed out there and just kind of put a tick next to the doubles as they come into your hand. Or whatever. I mean, I definitely don't have the memory to...
extreme Hearthstone gameplay. Get out the pen and paper.
But there are a lot of one-ofs. So, for instance, instead of 2 loot hoarders, you've got 1 loot hoarder, 1 novice engineer. Represents the same thing, card draw. Instead of 2 fireballs, you've got a forgotten torch, which turns into effectively a fireball. So that's actually a little extra burn. You know, you've got Cone of Cold in here. You've got a Pyroblast in here, which I've found super effective.
Yep.
Particularly if you can reduce its cost with a Thaurissan tick, and then potentially... You know, you could Ice Lance and Frostbolt and Pyroblast on 10 if you wanted to. So this is the deck we're going to see in action. As I said, I played a bunch of games, and so I've just kind of selected one that doesn't illustrate everything, but it's got a pretty cool Reno turn. So. And I have to warn you right now, it goes for like 15 minutes because there's a lot of thinking.
That is completely
So we're just gonna
fine.
have to keep the chatter up.
We'll keep up the banter as best we can.
So let's hop into that now.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're facing a priest here, and I believe Freeze Mage is favored against Control Priest, but going into this game, I'm not sure what type of priest it is. I think it could be Dragon Priest. It's probably Control Priest because that's more prevalent on the ladder right now. But I held on to the Doomsayer just because if it is Dragon Priest and they build up a big board very quickly...
You just want to get rid of it.
Like they curve out properly, I want to try and get rid of it. I mean, generally with Dragon Priest cards, they're kind of slightly lower attack, much higher health.
Yep.
So that kind of works in your favor with the Doomsayer. But then I drew into both Mad Scientists, which is ideal, because I can coin into the first one and then play the second one on 2, and then pull my Ice Block and an Ice Block and an Ice Barrier out of my deck. And then, as I kind of mentioned before, that thins the deck out and means that I can more effectively get to other cards.
Yep.
So at this point, I'm still not really sure what I'm facing because Museum Curator is just a all-round strong card from League of Explorers. So it's played in some Dragon Priest decks, and it's also definitely played in Control Priest. So I'm still, you know, not sure. Holy Smite, again, could be kind of either.
Yep.
It's probably more likely Control.
Oh, you've got a nice block, okay.
So I've got a nice block up, which, you know, isn't going to help me a great deal for a little while, but it's just so good to get it up early because then you don't have to spend mana trying to activate it later. So yeah, I just basically decided to ping face. I mean, I guess I could have played Forgotten Torch and thrown the Roaring Torch back into my deck to draw later, but it's going to be more effective as removal.
Yeah. Yeah, Ice Block is a very interesting one, isn't it?
It's a great card.
It is a great card, but it's also very frustrating when you're facing against it and you've carefully built your way to getting him down to 1.
Yep. Yep.
And you've got a strong deck and you're in good health.
Yep.
I mean, that's what happened to me with those 2 Ice Blocks in a row. I was swearing my head off.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. But it kind of changes what you're trying to do as well, because if you know they've got an Ice Block up, like the people, when you're playing Freeze Mage, it's the people who don't understand the absolute importance of proccing the Ice Block as early as they possibly can, that you know don't quite have a handle on the matchup. Because you need to clear that. Sometimes you have to do like weird things to just proc it in the hopes that they don't have another one, or that you can just get through them. But obviously you've got to survive at the same time because they've potentially got a lot of burn in the hand. It's such a complicated matchup. Like if you want to see a really interesting example of how Freeze Mage plays out, the Hearthstone World Championship 2015 at BlizzCon last year. There was a series between Tice and Ostkaka, and Tice is basically pretty much the best performing player of last year. and Osaka was the guy who went on to win the BlizzCon World Championships.
Yep.
And they had a Freeze Mage mirror.
Oh.
And it was
amazing.
It was so interesting because it completely changes the way that you play, because your game plan is shifting, and it was a very, very interesting match. Like, they wound up doing things like just playing a Blizzard on an empty board, because because you're drawing through your deck so fast, you actually find yourself on the verge of having 10 cards in hand a lot of the time. So sometimes, in particular matchups, you have to just throw a card away so that you don't burn a card out of your deck that's more important for you.
Yep.
So there was like some really interesting plays, like, oh, and by the way, just there, I decided to use the Forgotten Torch and a ping just to clear the board, just because there's some shenanigans they can do.
Oh God, I hate that card. I mean, I love it.
No, just the card sucks. Like, because I saw this come down, I'm like, well, that's going to make things really hard, because you can heal for 4 every single turn, and so
it's worse.
My burn is going to, I'm chasing a moving target basically.
Yeah. It's even worse when a warrior uses it.
Yeah, big time. So what I was going to say was, in that Freeze Mirror match, there was this really interesting turn where Osaka is on 10 health, and Tice has the opportunity to ping his face, and he doesn't. And that signals to Osaka on his turn that what Tice is trying to do is get him down to 1, because Osaka's about to go into fatigue, which means that that doesn't proc the ice block that he has up. So what it means is that on his turn again, if he's on 1 health and he takes 1 fatigue damage, he dies.
Right.
So the ice block's irrelevant. So he knows that Tice has a Fireball and a Frostbolt in hand, because that's what's going to get him to 1, and that's why he didn't ping. Because if he pinged and left him on 9, then he can't elegantly get him to 1, so he takes the fatigue damage and dies.
Right.
So Osaka pings his own face so that the maths doesn't work out anymore.
Oh my God.
Which
That's
is
so insanely ridiculous.
I know.
And amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it didn't end up, he lost the game in the end, but it's that kind of level of play that is possible with decks like Freeze Mage, and particularly mirrors between Freeze Mages. Okay, so I drew Thorison. So even though he's got a fair bit of damage on board, I figure I've got Pyroblast in hand, I've got Flamestruck in hand, I've got Archmage in hand, I've got a few spells in hand. Reducing the cost of those is going to be really important for me. I also am at this stage thinking about his Arcanine Soul Priest, because that represents 4 damage to my face every turn, because that's what his hero power can do. But on the flip side, it also means that he can't heal himself. So that's something that I'm, that you keep in mind. Like, can it work to your advantage, or is it? It's eventually going to be detrimental. Like, how much damage can you take before? Like, where does it shift? And that was a really, really bad play, because
that was an interesting play to play on an empty board.
It's a really bad idea, because there's so many ways I can clear this, and it's not going to get any value. Sylvanas is one of the best legendaries in the game. Yeah. But you have to know when to play it. Yeah. Because look at this, I can just Flame Strike, and then
that Death Rattle is just completely wasted.
And this guy got really unlucky there, because he basically out of what's that minion called? Anyway, out pops like pretty much the least powerful useful legendary he could have possibly got, apart from maybe Lorcacho. Yeah. So I was quite happy about that, but I'm getting relatively low. So yeah, so he plays an Injured Blade Master, but he can't heal it while the Okani's on board.
So have you decided at this point to keep the Okanai alive?
I'm just keeping it alive temporarily, but I am at 16 health now. Priest typically doesn't have that much burn. Yeah. But he's got 8 damage in minions, and I have an ice block up, but I don't actually have Reno. I don't have Alex Straza in hand, so I don't have any way to dig myself out of a hole. Yeah. So I could have drawn a couple more. I could have drawn a couple of fireballs there, but I decided instead I just need to start getting further through my deck. Right. So 1 fireball's fine, and then draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
So I'm sending Archmage out to die or to be entombed, as the case may be. But that's fine. So again, that's 4 damage. I'm getting pretty low now. But guess what? Because I played, because I drew extra cards. Well, I would have drawn it anyway.
Exactly what you're gonna do.
But I've got Reno.
You've got Reno.
That's really helpful.
You stayed on top of it. You stayed at.
This is the thing with Freeze Mage. If you know what's in your deck well enough, you know what the odds are of drawing something well enough. Sometimes you can do those plays where you're just like, I have a pretty good chance of drawing into something that's going to help me right now. And so a lot of the time it's kind of counterintuitive. You just leave the board, you've got an ice block up, and you just try and draw cards. You just try and draw into something that's actually going to help you win the game rather than just trying to stay alive.
What's your opinion towards those who call Reno a cheap card? I mean, not cheap as in its cost, but...
Reno's an amazing card.
Oh, I think it's an amazing card.
Yeah. No, Reno's... So I'm roping here because I'm just thinking about, okay, what should I do here? I decide to just, get 8 extra armor and get rid of the Soul Priest finally. Because hopefully I'll draw into my Alexstrasza or just be able to burn him down.
Yeah.
No, Reno's an amazing card because it's really shifted the way people play the game, and it's such a big potential swing card but like in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's just great against aggro. So I really like it.
Well, I think it's important, like...
And it's cool because it means that cards that don't usually see play come back because you're building a deck of 30 cards.
Yeah. Well, considering sort of Aggro Hunter was such a prevalent deck to be playing in the last season, it feels really good to have Reno in the mix now.
Yep. Yeah, Aggro Hunter, well, Face Hunter's definitely slipped down a bit. Mind you, we've got, Aggro Shaman now, which is... very aggressive and does really well. But there's always going to be fast decks in the meta.
Yeah.
That's not going to change. The good thing about cards like Reno is that they make control decks much more viable.
Yeah.
That's kind of the key. Okay, so he's overloaded the board a little bit here. I'm still on 33 effective health, and I've got 2 Frost Novas. I've got a Doomsayer. I've got a lot of options here to just wipe his board. So I actually think I make a mistake because what I decide to do is... what I should do is hit the Sludge Belcher and ping it so that it's Death Rattle procs and then freeze everything.
Yeah.
But I think what I did because... I don't know,
because everyone makes mistakes.
Everyone makes ordering mistakes, and I'm still thinking through what I'm doing as I'm doing it, which is the last thing you should do. You should decide everything before you do it.
Yeah.
But I did in this case. So he has a 1 attack minion that, who knows what could he do with that? I don't really know. And then I decided to just use a fireball, get him down to 17.
Wasn't the worst mistake in the world.
It wasn't the worst mistake in the world, and it doesn't come back to bite me.
Yeah.
So that's good. I just take 1 extra damage.
Right.
But at 33, that's not a real problem.
Yeah. What's he gonna do here?
Yeah, I mean, what could he do? I mean, he could entomb the Doomsayer. He's still got 1 more of those. Control Priests don't actually play Shadowword Pain anymore because that's like the ultimate counter to Doomsayer because it just, gets rid of it instantly.
Yeah.
They don't play, they don't really, he didn't have anything to do.
It's so brutal.
Yeah. And so now I'm thinking, okay, I got to do 21 damage, but he can heal himself for 4 every turn. So if I play Pyroblast, I can get him to 11, which would mean he'd heal back up to 15 unless he has like a heal bot or something in his deck. So I'm just evaluating because I've got a Forgotten Torch, I've got a Fireball, there's 6 each. I've got an Ice Lance and a Frostbolt, so that's 7 between those two, and then 10 on Pyroblast. So I've actually just got ample ample damage here. He has to do something really spectacular to get out of this. And as is always the way...
God. Last gasp.
I know.
Gasp.
What is that going to achieve?
Well, especially if you're under 30.
Yeah.
I just think. Like, that is just a very weak play.
It is an unbelievably weak play. And it's not a play that's going to help
Not at
win.
all. Not at all.
So yeah, I've just got easily enough in hand to do this. So anyway, there you go. That's a look at one of the games that I won with Freeze Mage. Let's not talk about the ones that I lost.
That's fantastic. I actually may have to try that because it looks like a lot of fun.
It's really, really fun. You just got to get your head around like how important card draw is.
Yep.
How little you need to pay attention to enemy minions. Like it's just not about minions with Freeze Mage. They're there to draw you cards, basically, or to clear the board.
That's great, Cam. Thank you so much for taking me through Freeze Mage. And, of course, we will be back soon looking at another Hearthstone deck that is currently kicking my ass.
Yep. That's what this series should be called.
That is exactly what the series should be called. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for more on Hearthstone. Stick with IGN.
Bye.